Our next speaker, Blaine Rada, decided to unplug from modern life, technology, and the 9-to-5 routine to walk 500 miles across northern Spain, a journey known as the Camino de Santiago. The physical, mental, and spiritual journey that is the Camino is profoundly personal, yet universally transformational. Blaine wrote an award-winning book about his experience and is here to share some of the lessons he learned along the way. Voices of Impact, please welcome Blaine Rada. Blaine.
Thank you, sir. Buen Camino. You probably didn't realize this was a multilingual presentation. Actually, the good news is it isn't. Those are probably the only 2 words of Spanish I'll say this entire time. I'll tell you a little bit about what Buen Camino means in a moment. So, thinking all the way back to when I was in high school, I think I've always been a student of success and personal development. Some people would say that I've actually, am more of an overachiever. In fact, in high school, my classmates voted me most likely to succeed. But in the ensuing years as an adult, I've really figured out that for me, success is really about transforming myself, becoming a better version of myself than I was yesterday. And I think that's somewhat universal. I think we want to change our lives for the better in various ways. The good news is that we don't ever have to be the same after today, except by choice. I mean, that sounds like something a motivational speaker would say, but it's a profound statement that we don't ever have to be the same today except by choice. You could very likely hear something today that could completely change the trajectory of your life. That sounds simple enough. But as we know, simple doesn't always equal easy. For one thing, while we crave change, we resist it. Think about how that applies to you. And so the enemy of success is not actually failure. I think the enemy of success is actually comfort. And so the solution for me is that I must find a way for my purpose to be more important than my comfort. So I decided a couple of years ago to do something very uncomfortable, to walk 500 miles across northern Spain, a journey known as the Camino de Santiago. Now, please do not be impressed. I am a slightly overweight, middle-aged man from the Midwest. People have walked this pilgrimage for over 1,200 years, and literally millions of people have done this. Now, the route that I took is the most common route that actually starts in a little small town in southern France, and you take a day or two to cross over the Pyrenees Mountains, and then you walk across Spain. It ends in a town called Santiago, specifically at the cathedral, because housed in that cathedral in Santiago are the remains of the Apostle St. James. But the word pilgrimage was kind of difficult for me because I didn't ever really grow up in any kind of specific religious tradition. So I seeked out definitions of pilgrimage to try to understand what is this thing that I am telling myself I'm doing. And these words from Parker Palmer were especially ringing true for me. I've underlined the things that I think are significant for just about any human being. A journey to a sacred center, making space for the true self to emerge. That sounds like transformation to me. But if you're noticing a lot of the words in the middle, we have hardship, darkness, peril, treacherous terrain, getting lost, falling. This is not meant to be a vacation. If I'm going to take a month off of my life and disconnect from everything that is normal, I need to come back a better version of myself than I was before. And back to my premise, I need to be okay with being uncomfortable. And I will tell you, it was extremely uncomfortable. What I didn't realize is that while I'm on pilgrimage, all of the things that are part of my normal life are going on as well. Now, I had a tradition, or a ritual, if you will, that every evening when I arrived at my destination, I would text my family. It was really the only communication I had with home. And I would just let them know where I arrived and send them a few pictures from the day. And they would text me back, and we'd have a little bit of an exchange, and that would be it. I treated myself once a week to speak with my wife, Jackie. And so on day 20, which was a really difficult day for me, I think I had walked over 30 miles, and it had taken over 13 hours. In fact, the town that I had planned on staying in that night, when I arrived, I got there so late that both of the hostels in that town were completely full, which means I had to just keep walking to the next town and hope that they had a place to stay. And so by the time I got to this hostel, finally, it was late. And hostels have very strict rules on the Camino. You have to be in your bed, off your phone, lights out, no talking by 10 p.m. People need to rest. And I got to this hostel so late that I only had time to grab a quick bite to eat and take a shower, and of course, text my family and let them know this is where I've arrived and here are a few pictures. And my wife immediately texts me back, "Hi, honey, thanks for the update. Can we possibly talk today?" Now, today is 7 hours earlier in Chicago. I reply back, "It's pretty late here. What about tomorrow, or can it not wait?" She replies, "That's fine." Could I just do a quick poll here? Are we fine? Is it good? Is it fine? Now, I could excuse it on, it's been a really long day, I am in excruciating pain, and I am severely, exhausted. But I definitely had a lack of empathy. I didn't really truly understand. What she's telling me is that she needs to talk now. And so she texts me back and says, "I'm taking mom home anyway. Dad is in the hospital in hospice." And so I reply, "Can I call you right away? I mean, I have to be off the phone very soon. Hostile rules. Or we can talk anytime tomorrow. I'm sorry." Still not demonstrating a huge amount of empathy. And her reply is, "I'm driving mom. She can't talk now. By the time she can talk, I'm not supposed to be talking." So we agreed in a couple of other texts that I would talk to her the next day. And as you can imagine, I didn't sleep well that night. I was thinking about my father-in-law, who is the closest thing to a father I've ever had. I was thinking about my mother-in-law and what she must be going through. And I was very disgusted and disturbed with myself that I had not made a greater effort to reach out to Jackie, that I hadn't even maybe broken some rules in order to do this. Now, why am I sharing such a kind of tragic story? When I woke up the next morning, exhausted, I just had a sense that I think he's gone. And I headed out that morning. Of course, I couldn't check at home because it would have been the middle of the night, and I had nothing in the tank. I mean, I just emotionally, physically was spent, and so I didn't go very far on that day. But when I did get to a hostel, I texted my wife and said, I'm set for the day, call me anytime. She immediately called me, and sure enough, in the middle of the night in Chicago, about the time that I woke up in Spain, her father had passed. And I'm sharing this because I want to share with you 3 tips, 3 tools, 3 techniques to assist you in your own transformation, however you choose to define that. And one of them has to do with the pain of life. I'm not just saying that transformation requires discomfort. We all know that life is uncomfortable, that there are times of incredible pain that we go through that can also be transformational. But how we handle that, and I'd like you to think specifically over the last few years and people that you know. There are people in our lives who have handled tremendous adversity, and they've almost come out a stronger, better person on the other side. And there are also people in our lives that we know where adversity has completely destroyed them. And so my first suggestion to you is that how we handle this stuff of life, this challenging, difficult pain, has everything to do with our ability to transform ourselves. Now, to change the mood a little bit, there's an incredible amount of joy on the Camino. I saw random acts of kindness taking place on a daily basis. In fact, there's an expression that the pilgrims, as we're called, express to each other anytime you come across a fellow pilgrim. And keep in mind, these are people from all over the world. English is probably not their first language. Unless they're from Spain, Spanish is probably not their first language. And yet everybody who walks the Camino says to each other, Buen Camino, which loosely translated means good journey. And it sounds so simple. It's two words, and yet you'd be amazed at the utterance of those words, and the receiving of those words lifts your spirits, makes you walk a little quicker, picks up your step just a bit. And when I came home, I was very interested in this idea of compassion and kindness. And so I did some research, and I found out it's contagious. In other words, studies have shown that when we as humans observe other people being kind and compassionate to others, we are much more likely ourselves to behave in the same way. So my second suggestion for all of us in trying to transform our lives is let's go out there and spread kindness and compassion, because not only does it help us in our transformation, it helps others in their transformation. And like ripples on a pond, we have no idea how far that spreads. We could literally change the world with kindness and compassion. The third key I wanted to share with you came to me on the very last day. I was actually ahead of my schedule. I got to Santiago early, and so I decided to walk another 50 miles to the coast, to the end of Spain, to the ocean, to what in medieval times people would have said was literally the end of the world. And as the enormity of what I had accomplished washed over me, literally because it was pouring, and I was sobbing, 550 miles in 25 days. Like, how is that even possible? It's possible because I cleared everything else out of the way. Life on the Camino is very simple. You wake up in the morning and you start walking, and eventually you stop. And the next day you repeat. And in between, you eat and you shower and you wash clothes and you meet interesting people and you sleep. That's it. I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about the stock market. I wasn't thinking about sports. I wasn't thinking about politics. In fact, my wife didn't even share with me how much it had hurt her that I hadn't made a greater effort to connect with her that night, because she didn't want that in my head. She didn't want me carrying that. She wanted me to finish what I started, and she could always share that with me when I got home. Letting go is very difficult. We cling, we hoard, we hold on to things, partly because we value them. So, as a quick recap of these 3 points, life is going to dish out the pain. We have a choice as to whether we consider that to be suffering or not. Spreading kindness and compassion is not only useful for our own transformation, it helps to transform others, and it just continues to ripple out from there. And letting go, especially of the things that you care about. It may be one of the hardest things that we do, and it may be one of the most important things that we have to do in order to achieve the transformation that we seek. In fact, there's even a spot on the Camino called Cruz de Ferro, which, as you can see, is this huge mound of stones with a post and a simple iron cross at the top. And the tradition is that when you arrive at this place, you have brought a stone with you from home. And I had been carrying a stone the whole time. And when you arrive at this place, you place the stone on the pile and you have an intention or a prayer of release. I am letting go of something that I no longer want to carry the weight of. What an amazing metaphor and an example of how we can, stone by stone, let go of things that no longer serve us, that weigh us down, that slow us down. So when people ask me, do you believe in transformation? Yes. It's not easy, but I believe in it. However, I also believe that we can't achieve it until we allow ourselves to be uncomfortable. And I wish that for you. Not discomfort. I wish for you transformation in whatever way you seek it. And I wish for you the ability to be uncomfortable. And maybe more than anything, I wish for you a hearty buen camino. Thank you.